to pull their pants up. 2 years later, I asked some of the people in Memphis, I said, do the kids wear their pants up at school now since we passed that legislation? You know what they said? No. You can't legislate godliness. Now, you might be able to take a few things that are not making us bad, but you can't legislate the hearts of men and women. That's where we are right now. We have had evil marketed to us as good. And we have bought into a culture where we're afraid and we're intimidated to speak up and say we are godly people, and we are not ashamed of it. I don't know if I mentioned when I was here about the book I had written, Michael's Two Daddies. And the book is simply a kid's book. It says, does God love Michael's two daddies? And the book says, yes. And he loves them as much as he loves you or me. He died on the cross for them, but just like a thief, if you keep thieving and stealing, then you're not forgiven. So they have to get out of that situation to be forgiven by God. At least try to get out of that situation. Listen, if you would see the reviews of that book on Amazon, I mean, I'm supposed to be burning in hell, and a lot of people hope that I do. It's horrible. It's terrible what people say when you tell the truth sometimes of God's word. But ladies, that doesn't mean we don't tell it. You tell it in love, and you love people. You know, I had 2 transgender women who would come to my office every year. The first year I was in, they came in and they sat there a while, and I thought they were like me. They looked just like us. And so they sat there and they said, oh, well, we want you to do us a favor. I said, what's that? They said, well, we want you to pass a law that says we can change our birth certificates to say that we were born women. I said, what? They said, yeah, we're men. We're just transgender. I said, oh, I didn't know that, but I couldn't have told that. And I said, has anybody ever asked you for your birth certificate to get a job? They said, no, but if they did, you know, we could be in trouble. I said, you know, that would frankly me be just telling a lie that you were born a woman. I said, I could not pass a law that would enable me just to lie about that. They said, well, you know, transgender people, they're the ones that commit suicide the most. Ladies, I'm sure they do, because they're confused and they're buying into this worldly idea. I saw something the other day where this couple has an 8-year-old girl and they're transgendering this poor little 8-year-old girl. What? And we're not going to speak out about that, or we're not going to do whatever we can do to say this is not right. We have to do it in love, but we cannot just accept that like it's all okay. We're having our eyes darkened by Satan. And you know what? It's not, in other cultures, they don't have as much of that as we do, but I will admit something that he said today. My son is a hunter. He takes a lot of people hunting, and he took 2 naval officers hunting recently, and those officers told him that this world is full of so much of the sex trafficking and pedophilia, and they said, you just can't believe it's bad here, and in other countries it's very, very bad too. Can you imagine the life of a little girl that gets caught up in sex trafficking? Don't you sometimes just want to weep for them? Sometimes I just want to weep for them. How can they ever have a normal life? How can we not be trying to do something about it? New York just passed legislation where you can kill a baby 3 inches, 4 inches before it is born. What in the world? God has to look down on us and just cry or be mad, and I'm not sure which. Or both. And we look at people that kill people for religious reasons, and we say, oh yeah, they'll kill you if you're a Christian. They'll kill you for religious reasons. We're killing for convenience. Do you think God sees any difference? I don't. So ladies, we have our own work to do here. And if you think that not being all involved in politics, I'm getting on the politics game, but listen, you have to have a voice. You have to look at Eagle Forum. You have to look at LifeSite News. You have to look at these places that you can help these unborn babies. We can help them. We can pass, in Tennessee, we're getting ready to pass, I hope and pray, a heartbeat bill, where once the mother hears the heartbeat, she has to hear the heartbeat. The doctor has to let her hear the heartbeat. Do you know How many of you, we never had an ultrasound when I had a baby. You know what happened the first time I heard that heartbeat? I fell totally and completely in love with that little heartbeat. I mean, I can't imagine a mother after she hears that heartbeat. There are things we can do, ladies. Listen, you have all the, look at everybody in this room. We are so blessed. Now, God gives things to us, but he works things through us. And the things that he gives to us, he expects us to use to do his will and the things that he would want done in this world. We're his heart and his hands and everything in this world. And he expects us to use what he gives us to his glory. Now, we're going to look in the Bible tonight about women and how in the early church, write down Ecclesiastes 3:11 and go home. This is why I never go to ladies' classes at PTP, because I know I'll always take off on their classes, and then I'll never get to what I study. But if you look at Ecclesiastes 3:11, when he was talking about those preachers who were preaching but had never seen a Bible, how do you do that? Well, Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, God has put eternity in your heart, so that no man can know the work that God does from the beginning to end. You could have everything in this world, but you'd still have a longing for Christ, because God has put eternity in your heart. And it's this round hole that sometimes we're trying to fill it with a square peg. We're trying to fill it with work, or we're trying to fill it with money, or we're trying to fill it with family, or we're trying to fill it, but it's never going to be full until you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, be baptized, become a part of the Lord's body, and then that hole is filled with the Spirit, the gift that you're given from God. And you don't have that longing anymore. There's nothing else that can fill that. Okay, now I'm going to go to my notes now. I always take off on somebody else's, so I can't help it. Okay, we're talking about women's influence in the world now. And I have to go back to the Old Testament, because God has given us the Old Testament for our learning. So go back with me and think about Eve. Was Eve influential? Yes. I noticed some sad faces when we say yes. I mean, she was. From the very beginning, she had as much, she could make us fall as much as Adam could, couldn't she? She knew what God said. She said, but God has told us not to eat from the tree. But she was beguiled by Satan. Satan said, look, it looks good to eat. I feel like Satan even took a big bite, because he said, look, it's good to eat. So Eve thought, oh yeah, I think I want to do that. So Eve was influential from the very beginning. Go back then to, go to Samuel chapter 25. Let me show you a woman here that reminds me so much of many of us. 2 Samuel chapter 5. I'm sorry, chapter 25. Oh, I guess it's 1 Samuel, sorry. Yes. I feel like most of us in this room are modern day Abigails. Lots of times we have to do things in spite of the circumstances that we're in. And Abigail certainly needed to. So look at 1 Samuel chapter 25. Then Samuel died, and the Israelites were gathered, and David arose and went down to the wilderness. Now here's what happened. Look at verse 2. Now there was a man in Mahon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich. So Abigail was married to a very rich husband. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. The name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife was Abigail. Look at this. And she was a woman of good understanding and beautiful appearance. There are so many women who have good understanding in this world today. There are so many women who are wise. You know why they're wise? Because they've looked into the Word of God, and they know how God would have them to live. That's where wisdom comes from. It doesn't come from all the self-help books, which can be helpful, but that's not where your wisdom comes from. Your wisdom comes from knowing things. Listen to the things that Abigail knew. Verse 4, when David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, go up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus you shall say to him who lives in prosperity, Peace be to you, peace to your house, and peace to all that you have. Now I have heard that you have shearers. Your shepherds were with us, and we did not hurt them, nor was there anything missing from them all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and to your son David. Now, sounds like Nabal wasn't very interested in caring about who they were, does it? I mean, David's trying to explain to him, but all Nabal sees David as just a wandering person in the wilderness with all these men to feed, and he doesn't have much use for him. Look at verse 10. Then Nabal answered David's servant and said, who is David, and who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away from their master. Maybe you're just one of those servants who has broken away from his master. Listen to verse 11. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men when I do not know where they are from? Now, he certainly did not have a godly attitude, did he? He certainly was not hospitable. He certainly didn't want to share everything that he had. He was a very foolish man. And the word Nabal means foolishness. He was a very foolish man, married to a very wise and beautiful woman. So let's see what she knew that he didn't. So David's young men turned on their heels. They could not believe that he would have said this about the future king. So David's men turned on their heels and went back, and they came and told David all these words. Then David said to his men, every man gird on his sword. So every man girded on his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And about 400 men went with David, and 200 stayed with the supplies. Now, what was David's reaction right now? He's going to go fight. He's mad, isn't he? This was one of David's reasons that he didn't get to build a temple. You know why David didn't get to build a temple? Because he was a man of war. Solomon got to build the temple because David had this attitude, oh, he's going to do this to me. Well, watch and see what we're going to do to him. So, look at verse 14. Now listen to this. Now one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. Wonder why he would go to Abigail. Do you think maybe he thought Abigail would find a way to do something about this? This is kind of funny, but is it ever that way in your family? Let's go tell Mom. Let's see if Mom can help with this. Yeah, that's kind of the way it is, isn't it? But these men who worked in that household knew that Abigail had the wisdom in that household, and that Abigail had understanding. And what we're going to find out is Abigail knew who David was. She was listening to the right people. Nabal was too busy. He was not concerned about that. Look at verse 14. Now one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything as long as we accompanied them when they were in the fields. They were a wall to us by night and day, and all the time we were with them keeping the sheep. They're basically telling Abigail that David helped them, saved their sheep, did everything while they were in the wilderness. Look at verse 17. Now therefore know and consider. I love this. I have it underlined, highlighted. Now therefore know and consider what you will do. Did they expect Abigail to take action? Yes, they did. Did they think Abigail was going to sit and let that happen? No, they said, listen, Abigail, consider what you will do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a scoundrel that no one can speak to him. You know, back then, in the culture, you mostly married whoever they told you to marry. It's even that way in India right now. Ricky Gudam, who graduated college from Freed, his wife was chosen for him. Now, he saw her one time and told his parents he might like to, see her. He never had one date while he was at Freed Hardeman. And then he went to Oklahoma and got his MBA. Never dated a girl. I was in the airport one time in Arizona. I'm standing there with a man, and he said that he was going to visit his daughter in New York, that she had just graduated last year and gotten married, and he was going to visit her. And I said, well, did she marry her high school sweetheart? He said, oh, no. No, he said, we're from India. I said, well, who did she marry? He said, we advertised. Yeah. How would you like that, Mom? We advertised. Oh, I said, you advertised? He said, yes. I said, well, how does that work? He said, well, she was graduating. We wanted her to go to college, but we thought she would do better in college if she was married. So we advertised for her husband. I said, well, then what happened? He said, we got 20 applicants. 20 applicants. And he said, we narrowed it down to 5, my wife and I. And then we let those 5 come and visit, and she picked one. I said, okay, well, how's that working out? He said, it's great. They're happy. They're both in college. They're making wonderful grades. He said, they are doing wonderful. And that's in the American culture that they cause that to happen. So, you know, they still do that. And Ricky said that he had met his wife and seen her, and he slipped her a cell phone. Now, this has been about probably 10 years ago. He slipped her a cell phone, and he said one day her brother caught her talking to him on that cell phone, and he dialed it up, and he got Ricky on the phone. He said, who is this? He said, Ricky. He said, you gave my sister a cell phone. My parents will be to your house. And Ricky said, no, well, I'll tell you what. He said, me and my parents will come down there in the next week. I promise you we'll come in the next week and get that phone. He said, okay, you better come because, I mean, honor is a big thing there. And he was, you know, defiling her honor by giving her that cell phone. And so he went down there and they took a necklace and they got engaged. And that's how they got married. So, I mean, it still works that way in a lot of cultures. So she may very well have been married to this scoundrel because that's who somebody picked for her. And that's how it was a lot of times. So the men were very good to us, but they were a wall. Now look at verse 17. Now therefore know and consider what you will do. For harm is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a scoundrel that no one can speak to him. Then Abigail made haste and took, listen to this, 200 loaves of bread. Wow. Sometimes I'm lucky to have 2 slices. I mean, they had to have this all worked out, that they had to have food for a very long time, didn't they? 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed. Now we have sheep, but we don't have 5 already dressed. 5 sheep already dressed, 5 sheaths of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on the donkeys. Now, does it appear to you that Abigail did have some freedom in that household? Of course. I mean, if I started loading up my car like that, Stan's probably going to ask me, where are you going with all that stuff? You know? But no, Abigail had the freedom to take that stuff and load it up. So she wasn't probably as oppressed as we might think. And she said to her servants, go on before me. See, I am coming after you. But she did not tell her husband. And I have a little note in my Bible here that says timing. She did not tell her husband. Is timing everything when you're trying to tell your husband something? I think it is. I think timing is huge. When the boys were growing up, if he would come in the evening and they wanted to ask him something, I would say, no, not before he eats. Never ask him anything before supper. It was always no. I mean, imagine he has low sugar or something, but everything was always no before supper. And so I said, no, ask him after supper. I mean, timing is big. So she did not tell her husband right that minute what all she was taking to David. So it was, as she rode on the donkey, that she went down under cover of the hill, and there were David and his men coming down toward them. Now, you think she wasn't scared? Have you ever had your knees literally knocking and your heart going so fast you could hardly stand there? Can you imagine how she felt with this army coming toward them? Now David had said, surely in vain I have protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belongs to him, and he has repaid me evil for good. May God do so and more also to the enemies of David, if I leave one male of all who belong to him by my own life. He intended to kill every male in that family. And David had every intention of doing that. Now when Abigail saw David, listen to this. She dismounted quickly from the donkey, fell on her face before David, and bowed to the ground. What's that remind you of? It reminds me of someone who's so sinless. It reminds me of her sinless sacrifice, just about, that she's saying, look, I haven't done anything, but she honored David. She knew who David was. Listen to the rest of the story. She knew exactly. So she fell at his feet and said, On me, my Lord, on me let this iniquity be. And please let your maidservant speak in your ears and hear the words of your maidservant. Now imagine how David felt when there this beautiful woman had dismounted and was on her face before him, calling him Lord. Most men, that's going to melt their heart pretty good. That's all I can say. I mean, I think he's a little impressed at this moment. She's on the ground. She said, please let this fall on me. Please let not my Lord regard this scoundrel Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your maidservant, did not see the young man of my Lord whom you sent. Now therefore, she keeps calling him my Lord. Therefore, my Lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, since the Lord has held you back from coming to bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now then let your enemies and those who seek harm for my Lord, she knows David's going to be the king, be as Nabal. And now this present which your maidservant has brought to my Lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the trespass of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make for my Lord an enduring house. See, she knows. She knows who David is. And she's listened to the prophets. And she knows who David is. Evil is not found in you. Oh, look at verse 28. Please forgive the trespass of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make for my Lord an enduring house, because my Lord fights the battles of the Lord. She knew David was fighting the battles of the Lord. And evil is not found in you throughout your days. Yet a man has risen to pursue you and seek your life, but the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God. And she's telling David exactly who he is, and she said, listen, don't let bloodshed fall on your house anymore. She said, don't. Look at verse 32. Then David said to Abigail, blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who sent you this day to me. Did God use Abigail? Absolutely. And blessed is your advice, and blessed you are, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed and avenging myself with mine own hand. David gave God the glory for sending Abigail. And ladies, that's what our work on this earth is. To be the representative of God in this world. And we can't be afraid to do that. And we have to make opportunities to do that. And that's just what Abigail did. Now, do you know the rest of this story? Nabal fell dead. Look at verse 39. So when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, blessed be the Lord, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept his servant from evil. He said, thank you that God has kept me from evil. Through whom? Through Abigail. That's exactly right. When the servants of David had come to Abigail, look at the rest of verse 39. For the Lord has returned the wickedness of Nabal on his own head, and David sent and proposed to Abigail to be his wife. So from the wife of that scoundrel, she became queen, because she knew God. She was wise. She knew who David was supposed to be, and she did what God intended for her to do. Ladies, that's our life in a nutshell. God intends for us to do what he wants us to do. How do we find that out? We find that out from his word. And what about Esther? What about Esther? Here was poor little Esther. The king at that time was horrendous. He was one of the worst, vile kings that could be. And here was little Esther, Mordecai's cousin, but she happened to be beautiful. And you know something else Esther did? When she got there, she didn't do all the beautification and everything that the rest of the women did. If you read the chapter, it says she just did what the king's servant told her to do. She was very submissive. And Esther was in the right place at the right time to save the nation. God has used women. Deborah was a judge. They didn't even want to go into battle without Deborah, because Deborah was wise. God has used women from the beginning of time to fulfill his will in this world. And ladies, we got to know that we're just as important as an Abigail or an Esther, any of the women that God used. And yes, we can be used for good, or we can make wrong decisions like Eve did. So what do you base your decisions on? John 12:48 says, by my word you'll be justified. By my word you'll be condemned. all your decisions should be based that we can on these words. Because that's it in the long run. And we have to be wise like Abigail and Esther and know those things. You know what Christian women know that the rest of the world doesn't know? We raise dogs at our house, and we have big dogs and little dogs. So this story of the two dogs just really was interesting to me. There were two dogs, and one was a real big dog that lived at the house, and then there was this little bitty cockapoo that lived at the house. And one day the big dog just thought the cockapoo was useless. He just couldn't stand that cockapoo. You just said, nothing, you don't have to do anything. So the big dog said to the cockapoo one day, said, you are pitiful. I don't know why they have you around here. You can't do anything. And that little cockapoo just sat there, and he said, look, I can open this door. The big dog said, I can open this door. He went to the door. He started growling on that handle, pulling that handle. I mean, after about 5 minutes, he worked that door open. He looked at that cockapoo. He said, you could never do that. You're useless. So he went over, he pulled the door back, and he said, let me see you do it. The little cockapoo walked over to the door and went, 3 seconds, the door opened. What was the difference? The cockapoo knew who was on the other side. And the cockapoo knew that that person on the other side had the strength and would open that door instantly. Ladies, we know who's on the other side. Every single one of us. So when we say things like, use this up in the Lord, go ahead, because we know who's on the other side. When we have to do things in this world that we know are hard, when we have to tell the truth and the world doesn't like to hear, do you know what the world hates to hear the most about? If I'm in the legislature and talk about abortion, people just go nuts. Well, you're trying to legislate my womb. You're trying to legislate. Oh, no. Why? Because, listen, having babies and killing babies is not politics. It's evil. You call it politics. God calls it evil. All the things that we've labeled as politics, that's not politics. If it's evil, it's evil. And you're not speaking up against it because you're trying to be political. You're speaking up against it because it's evil. And silence in the face of evil is evil itself. And you'll be accountable. It's just the way it is. We can't be silent. Now, when we look over in the New Testament, Psalms 133:1, just write this down because we're going to have to go kind of quickly here. Psalms 133:1 says, how good and pleasant it is for brethren, and I put and sisters, to dwell together in unity. Ladies, we gotta not take things that we say about each other so hard. We have to dwell. Look with me at Philippians chapter 4, please. Philippians chapter 4. Now, these are two women in the church that have obviously worked very hard in the church. You're going to find, and these next two lessons that I'll be talking about, is the women in the church throughout the centuries and what they have done in the Lord's church. Remember that when we talk about women in the church in the Bible, we're talking about a very little segment of the culture at that time. Exactly what he said this afternoon, or this evening. The church was a very little segment of the Hellenistic culture. Now, when I say the Hellenistic culture, do you know what that means? The Greek culture. The Greek culture would be different than the Jewish culture. And then, of course, you had the Roman culture. And the Roman culture would be different than the Greek culture. So when we talk about betrothing, for example, the betrothing of the Roman culture would be different than the betrothing of the Hellenistic culture. As a matter of fact, in the Hellenistic culture, you could be betrothed and even be married, but still be under the hand of your father. Your father still had the say in everything. There were different kinds of betrothal. There were different kinds of marriages between the Greeks and the Romans. They all had a different culture. So the culture that we read about in here is the culture of the church after that. But I'll tell you that tomorrow. Okay. I hope most of you can come back tomorrow. We got a lot to talk about. Philippians 4. Look what's happening here. This is Paul writing to the Philippians. He says, therefore, my beloved and longed for brethren, my joy and crown. So stand fast in the Lord, my beloved. He loved the Philippians. Paul, they were always good to him. They always tried to help him. And then look at verse 2 after he says, how much I love you. He said, I implore Euodia and I implore Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. Does it sound like they might be having a few little problems there? I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I went to a congregation, was going to go to the kitchen and have a cup of coffee, and one of the young minister's wives said, do you think I could get a cup of coffee? And she said, well, if the kitchen Nazis will let you. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a little rough. I thought, well, I'll just go see those kitchen Nazis. I'm kind of like that. When I first started running for office, and the Rotary Club, the 7 o'clock morning Rotary Club, when I was running for office and I spoke to them, they did not like me. They said, oh, you would have a theocracy, Sheila. If we vote you in there, you would just try to make everybody believe the Bible. They told me that after I spoke to them that morning. So I thought, okay, I'm joining the Rotary. The 7 o'clock Rotary. Because when people don't like me, my instant thing is to try to make them my friend. And I think that's how you overcome so many things. Do you know how to get rid of an enemy? Make them your friend. Exactly. And you know what? I got out of the Rotary 6 years later and they cried. They did not want me to leave that Rotary. I worked hard in that Rotary and they knew I did. And they knew I was there for everything good, whatever they wanted me. They were sad when I left the Rotary. But they didn't like me at first because I was a little too Christian for them. But this is how you work in the world. And when those ladies that came to my office that were transgender, when they left that day, I hugged them. They're in my district. I mean, I've never seen them before, but they said, we live on this street, we're in your district. I hugged them. And I said, you know, I care for you, but I could not pass a law like that. And they said, okay. Well, they came back a year later. And they sat there, and one of them said, Sheila, I've been waiting a whole year to come back and talk to you. And I said, well, how come? She said, because I just want you to know that I was raised in a Christian family. I said, you were? She said, yes. And she said, I think what I'm doing is perfectly fine, and I was raised in a Christian family. I said, well, where could you find that that would be okay in the Bible? She said, well, the Bible never mentions transgender. Well, but it does mention this. In the beginning, God created Adam and Eve. Yes, but it never mentions transgender. Well, I believe that in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve. And you may love somebody, but you've got to love them enough to tell them the truth. So I know they like me and I like them, but I cannot change anything that I believe to make them feel better. And neither can you. That's part of the responsibility as Christians. If we keep looking more and more like the culture, are we going to be able to change the culture one little bit? No. We're to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, which is right here. This is how you renew your mind from what the world is putting in day after day after day. The world is putting things in your mind every day. Okay, but I want to talk about these 2 women here for just a minute. He says, I implore Euodia and I implore Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. And I urge you also, true companion, help these women who labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also, and the rest of my fellow workers, whose names are written in the book of life. That word labor right there doesn't mean that they just baked a pie. Not that baking a pie isn't labor. It is for me. My grandkids can make pies better than I can. That's just not one of my talents. But these ladies did a whole lot more than cook. They labored in the Lord, which means manual. I mean, that word labor in the Greek means they worked hard, right along with the men, as they were working, spreading the gospel, helping them, whatever they could do to help. And look what he says. He says, your names are written in the book of life. Are you going to let a disagreement keep your name out of the book of life? He's basically saying because of your bad attitude, you could be blotted out of the book of life. Ladies, we are called to love one another. If you have a problem with a sister, you better not say a word about it until you go to her first. Don't you dare. The Bible says if you have a problem, you go to your sister. That's it. You two work it out. If you can't work it out, then go to the elders. Talk to the elders. But this talking about each other all the time or saying, oh, bless their heart. No, you don't get to say anything you want to about somebody and then bless their heart. You don't. That's not how that works. And he's telling them right there that you sisters need to get along in the Lord. Now, are there some things that don't matter? And if they don't matter, forget it. Does it matter what color carpet you have upstairs? Ladies, let it go. It doesn't matter. So many little things that we just harp on that don't matter. We have to give up our opinion about those things. Who cares? I'll tell you what, go to India. Go to one of these places where there's no carpet. Go to one of these places where, exactly like he said it was in India, there's not a commode. There is a hole with the little plastic thing on it, and no tissue in India. Ha! I mean, I'm glad I was warned before I went, or I'd have really been in bad shape. You know what you do? You go to the restroom in India, and there's no tissue. One day, Stan Jr. got me about a quarter roll of tissue somewhere in the hotel. He said, "Mother, look what I got." I mean, it's bad when you're so excited over a quarter roll of tissue. But in the bathrooms there, all the public bathrooms, no tissue. They have the hole, and now they might have one that would be an American commode that sits up. But no tissue. They have a little hose pipe with a little hose on it. So I guess they wash off with the hose. Okay? But they're wearing those sarafis. So tell me how they and wash up with a hose, and everybody's not wet all the time. I don't know. I've been trying to figure this out since I left. I mean, they take their kids in there, they take them on the potty, they wash them off with the hose. They wash off with the hose, and nobody's wet when they come out. So I don't know. This is a mystery to me, and I know that I'm probably going to have to figure this one out, because I don't know. I took plenty of the little feminine wipes, and I was fine, but still, that doesn't help them a whole lot, because their septic system is horrendous. It's going down the street. I mean, when you walk in, it's down in it's going right down there. So if you put tissue in it, that's really not a really good thing either. So anyway, it's interesting. I'll tell you one more thing, and then we're going to finish more of this tomorrow. But sisters, we have got to encourage and help each other, because nobody else is going to do it. Do you think the world cares about your love for the Lord? Not for 1 second. Do you think they care if we go to other countries and teach people the gospel? Not for 1 second. Do you think they care if you, yeah, they do care if you work at a pregnancy center and try to get people not to have abortions. They really care about that. They don't like that much in this culture anymore. But as sisters, we've got to be able to tell each other the truth and not get offended. I'm so tired of people getting offended. Do you think our Lord and Savior was offended? Yeah, do you think he did some offending? Yeah, I believe so. I don't think you call people hypocrites unless you offend them a little bit. Yeah, he did some offending too, because he told the truth. But there was a sister in Colorado when we went to the Bear Valley School of Preaching, and her name was Marguerite Gray. Well, when we went out there, we owned a Chrysler Plymouth dealership, and we were pretty well off. I mean, we could give lots of money and give to whatever we wanted to, and it was just great. And why we decided to go to school of preaching, I'm not sure. Some preachers came through and talked to my husband, and so within a month he said, "We're going to go to the school of preaching, and we're going to go in a mission field." And I said, "Okay." And so somebody came, bought our Chrysler Plymouth dealership that day. I'm sitting there, okay, he's buying the dealership. He said, "Do you guys have a house?" I said, "Yeah, we have a house." He said, "Well, let us come look at your house." He bought our house the same day. So we were going to Bear Valley School of Preaching. I mean, it happened that quickly. So we went up to Bear Valley School of Preaching. I thought, okay, this will be fun. We'll get 3 years of Bible study. I'm going to love it. It's going to be great. And I'm going back to, a car dealership or whatever we're going to do. Well, we happened to have Marguerite Gray in class. Well, one night Marguerite Gray said, what was the first thing she says? Oh, she told everybody not to come out there and have babies, because people don't send you to the School of Preaching to have babies. And I have 3 little boys under 3 years old. And I'm sitting there with my 3 little boys under 3 years old. She says, "Don't come to school preaching at baby." Okay. Second thing she said, "I want every one of you to go in a mission field." And I thought, I'm not going to a mission field. I'm going back. And so I raised my hand that first time in class, and I said, "Marguerite, I don't want to go in a mission field." I said, "I want to go back and teach my parents, because they're not Christians." And in front of that class, she said, "Sheila, how long have you been a Christian?" And I said, "About 7 years." She said, "Have they listened to you yet?" I said, "No, not yet." She said, "Well, do you know there are people in the world who will listen to you eagerly? So there might come a time you have to go teach those people." Oh, I didn't like that answer. I didn't like like it a bit. I didn't really like Marguerite all that much. So when there are a few more weeks, you have to take this class or you can't get out of the school. So when there are a few more weeks, and she says, okay. She said, since you're going to the mission field, you're all going to have to go out and raise money. She said, now you just may as well know that you and your husband are going to have to raise money to do this mission work. I raised money. I said, you know, Marguerite, we were always the givers. I said, we could always give money, and I just really enjoyed giving money. And she said, do you think the Lord needs your money? She said, all the money's the Lord's money, Sheila. He needs you and Stan a lot worse than he needs your money. Okay. I didn't like that. So then she says, okay, for everybody in this class, every woman in this class, before you get out of here, you're going to have to teach this class. Oh, no, I was not going to teach that class. I mean, we lived in Portland, Tennessee. We were all supposed to sign up to teach a ladies' class, and I signed up as the very last person, which was going to be about 13 weeks, and we moved to Colorado before it got to me. Because I was not looking back. I mean, I just wasn't. And so Marguerite says, okay, Sheila, you're going to teach the class. So I go to her in her office. I said, Marguerite, I just can't teach this class. I said, I've seen ladies taking Valium. Get up and teach. And I am not going to take Valium, and I'm not going to teach this class. She said, okay. Then you're just not going to graduate from the school. I didn't take Valium. I did teach the class. I made a B, which I'm lucky I stood up there that long. But anyway, I made a B, and got out of that class. And I'm gonna tell you that I did not like Marguerite Gray. But you know what? You know what Proverbs says? Iron sharpens iron. And Marguerite Gray was iron. She knew what we needed. And she knew what we needed to do. And you know what happens when iron strikes iron? Sparks fly. That's exactly right. And the sparks flew between Marguerite Gray and I. And I can't tell you how many times in our years since then that I've been thankful for Marguerite Gray. And at one of our 10-year reunions, I got to go back and speak. And Marguerite was sitting on that front row. And I told the story. And I said, Marguerite, I know you didn't like me much. And I didn't like your answer. And I didn't like your answer very much either. But I said, you have been one of the most motivating factors in my life from the time I met you. And it's the truth. So the least we can do, ladies, is tell each other the truth. And so what? Try not to be offended by it. But tell the truth to each other in love. And go on about not your business, the Father's business. Marguerite was about the Father's business, and she wanted me to be. And you know what? If it wasn't for Marguerite Gray, I probably wouldn't be. And it was hard. Listen to your sisters. They care about you. They're the only ones who know the Lord that you're going to talk to during the day. Half the people, 90% of the people at your work could care less what the Lord thinks or what you're doing for the Lord. We have each other. And we have each other worldwide. We just don't know it. I can't tell you the joy that we brought to the ladies in India, just Georgia and I going there. I'll tell you tomorrow about going to the leper colony. Those ladies in the leper colony, they just want to touch you. They just want you to touch her. It was just amazing. And they're our sisters. It was a leper colony of Christians in that leper colony. So there's work to do. Find your work. God gives it to you, and He'll do everything through you. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for this time that we spend together as Christian women, Father, who truly love you. Father, I know that these women would not be here tonight if they didn't want to do your will, to be the light in this world that you intend for us to be. And Father, let us look past our work. Let us look past our own congregation. Let us look to the fields that are white. And Father, if the time comes that our faith has to be tested in fire, then so be it. And I hope we'll say, Father, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, our Lord will deliver us. But if not, we won't serve any other God ever. Help us, Father, to help the other women who need you so much in this world. and what we can do to encourage them, admonish them, strengthen them, and help them be closer to you every single day. Father, thank you for your beloved Son, Jesus Christ, that we love dearly. Thank you for letting him die on the cross for us, so that one day, Father, we can live with you for eternity. And this is our prayer through Jesus' precious blood in his name.